Hi there. Hi there, world, and hi there, Tad. I'm so happy to, yeah, have you on this Showgirl Awakening deck interview series because you have had, there are your fingerprints in this deck. You have absolutely helped guide me to uncover really to find a good chunk of this content and to articulate it. And I just want to introduce you for those of you who are either listening or listening and seeing us right now. You are in the presence of Tad Hargrave, who has created Marketing for Hippies, and that's how we met. And master of niching and point of view. If you don't know, if you work for yourself and you don't know what point of view is yet, oh my goodness, I'm giving you a gift that we will be unpacking slowly over this interview and another to come even next month. Yeah, it was, I'll remind again, but you can find Tad at marketingforhippies.com, and same on Facebook. Tad's extremely generous with his own point of view and his own take on marketing and how it can feel really good, not just full of integrity on a technical level, but feel good and be a service. And yay, Tad, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. This, even the name, we're first and primarily looking at one of the cards of the decks that comes from the frame suit. And it's framed literally like putting on a pair of glasses. These frame cards are each a different pair of glasses through which to perceive human dynamics.
Well, and before we jump into that, because
I mean, thank you.
We worked together, of course, in my mentorship program, and
yeah.
So we were working together on crafting a lot of this point of view. I'm curious, what is this deck, and like, where did the idea come from? Why did you create? Why another deck? Does the world need another?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't come from that angle. So I'm just actually going to mention a frame here. This is the frame of the artist versus the entrepreneur. There's two sides to, and Tad, you have videos and you have blogs and a lot about this. And I'll just say very succinctly that the artist point of view of entrepreneurship is, what is it that I'm moved to create? Mm-hmm. What am I called and inspired to create? Yeah. That's where the creation begins. And if you lean on the entrepreneur side of the entrepreneur path, it's what does the world need? So while I do believe there is definitely some very specific subsections of the world that do need this, I didn't start from that place. I started from, what am I moved to create? Thanks for asking for that context.
Why were you moved to create this? What was it about this that drew you to make it?
Wow, okay, I just caught on a meta level, why I was moved to create this is very related to why I do this work at all. And what it's made possible for me, and why I thought to share my own process in a sometimes more systematic and sometimes less systematic way. It's been all of this whole deck, the whole Showgirl Awakening deck, different doorways into having the experience of being, this is going to be a little more big chunk, fully alive, fully embodied. These are processes that I have experienced through my attention on these different practices and concepts. I have become, it's been my path to individuation, my path to, again, this buzzword of becoming myself. Yeah, individuation is kind of a sterile word, but honestly, this is a deck about individuating. Yeah.
And why a deck, not a book or a video series? Or, you know?
Okay, well, those are coming, but this felt, and I think this is very much like, you know, my work often involves creating or facilitating someone else creating a conscious burlesque solo. These are like all their own, they're short and they are discreet, even though they interrelate, because they are a doorway, each one of them, they focus me. This is taking, there are many mini decks within here, meaning for the next 30 years, I could, for my own self, in my own practice and in teaching, this could be my map for the next 30 years, and I wouldn't be done. I would die, and then someone else could pick up on, well, she didn't really go into that frame as much as we'd like, so we're going to continue on with that frame. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's I just get, because I've never made a deck, and I haven't actually worked with a lot of clients who have a few, but I guess it's such a useful tool for people as a way to work with the point of view, to work with the material is
yeah.
Here's just one principle, and how might this principle apply to your situation or what you're struggling with. And that people may say, yeah, I'm really struggling and I really resonate with this point of view, but how do I apply it? And this gives a kind of,
you talk sometimes about the safety of what's a small chunk of that I can share with someone. If someone is, they're sniffing around thinking, this work seems interesting, but I don't know about it. Maybe I don't want to read a whole book. Maybe I just want to draw a card a day. Or it incrementalizes what can feel very vast to me.
right, and allows it to become a practice rather than a theory.
It allows it to become a practice. It's very, all of them have some invitation to an experience. And maybe one card will say, okay, here's some thoughts. Now draw a card from this other subdeck, which is going to have an action for you. I don't honestly know all of these the interwebs of how that will come out, but I can tell it will be that way. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you want to dive into the one card? And thank you for being an inviter of context. That I always appreciate. But wait, I want to say a little more before we dive into the concept that, I think I already seeded it. Is collapsing versus posturing, which is one of the frame cards. I was in your Marketing for Hippies mentorship. I was in your living room for the retreat. And I'll be very, very honest and vulnerable. I was trying to articulate something to get to my point of view, and I just ended up in tears, because that's how hard it was just a couple of years ago for me to put words to my felt sense experience that I knew I could track in myself, and I could track in other people, and I could replicate it. And I know how to do this with someone. How do I talk about it? Just drove me to tears. And you invited me with this beautiful, simple exercise. You gave me access, but said, okay, how does someone feel before they come and have a Showgirl Awakening experience? They take a course. How do they feel before? And how do they feel after? We had under and over. There was what was the change? And this, before that, I had place markers for the archetypes. There's a suit of Showgirl Awakening archetypes in the deck. And I knew what the names were, and I had this vague sense. That vague sense shifted to, oh my gosh, I'll just take one. I'm the ingenue in the archetypes. And the ingenue, and I'll give this will make much more sense if I describe. I see the archetypes as, they're all kind of old Hollywood names: the diva, the starlet, the vixen, the vamp. And as they are shown in the old movies, that's how we know those terms, they're caricatures of themselves. They are either posturing, puffing up and blaming and or they are, if you happen to be seeing us, you'll see my body collapsing. I can hardly say that word without actually collapsing. They are turning in on themselves. They're falling into shame. They're hiding. They are a reduced version of themselves, a reduced or an exaggerated. So in the movies, I saw the archetypes moving through these Hollywood stars as either in a puffed up way or a shrinking down. Oh, here I am. I can't tell you what I know. No, oh, you must know better. So the middle I call alive and well. So I'm pointing to, because I'm so desiring that middle ground. Not even the middle, it's just a different. If it's a triangle, it's a different place. And so the ingenue, when she's alive and well, this is when she trusts herself. Self-trust is her superpower. It's her gift. And I'm happy to say she's much more alive and well in me. It's still a journey. When I knew her most in collapse, where I trusted other people more than myself. And this happened to be a way, this was one of the traits, and still is, of the women I'm lucky enough to work with, is moving from feeling, knowing, trusting, tending to the outside experience, someone else's, and shifting in. This whole work for me is about shifting in and knowing, what do I know? What is my information? What are my needs? What are my feelings? So hopefully that gives a sense of the collapsing and posturing. And I know I've spun out a little because I live so in the middle of this.
I'm curious for you, this tendency to take care of other people's needs.
Yeah.
Do you see that as the province primarily of collapsing or posturing, or do you see it being a thread that connects them both?
I see it mostly as a, I see it mostly as connected to collapsing, but that might be because that's the territory I know it through. I'll be very honest, I don't understand posturing as well. You'll even notice in my descriptions, there's often a little less on posturing because it's not the territory that I know as deeply. But what I want to say is this, and you're only sideways nosing me there, but it's important for me to say, they're equally toxic.
Yes, right.
They're equally toxic. There is a sense, and one that really landed for me not that long ago, just a few years ago. Oh, it hit me in the stomach. Most folks who collapse are doing so because they're so afraid of posturing. It's like, oh my gosh, I so don't want to come off like that other person who made me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to kind of suck in my breath and move towards the corner and charge half the amount that makes sense, or whatever. Yeah.
But they have that exact same feeling from the other side.
So please tell me, give some words to that.
Somebody who's in that posturing thing looks at somebody who collapses and thinks, so disgusting. They're so fucking spineless. Oh my God, I hope I never come across like that. I hope I never come across like such a weak-willed jelly, victim. Like, what a fucking pushover. What a doormat. I hope I never come across like that. And then I think they have a similar, I've never said that before, but that,
wow.
I think that's how it looks through their eyes.
You're causing me to kind of try that out and see. When I have the experience of seeing, I'll be honest here, I've never said this out loud. This feels a little risky. I can feel irritated.
Yeah.
I can feel irritated, but it's because I see what's possible. I see that when it's dusted off, when the patterns of shrinking are dusted off, like I feel their nascent shininess. So I don't get stuck in I'm irritated by it. I get to work. I get to work in the best way of reflecting back. It's mostly a mirroring of reflecting back the what I do see. I would say this might be a posturing. I might feel it when I'm in the irritatedness. I know how to turn myself to the not irritated, just reflecting the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and it's I just think this is good for people to hear. I mean, I'm happy to fess up on this one.
Okay.
I think there's something inherently irritating about people who collapse. I just think this is built in to our DNA. But the same with posturing. It's irritating in another way. It does not feel good to be around people who are collapsing and posturing. That's just good feedback for people to get. What a great time. Oh man, let's hang out and do that again. Can I carry the burden of your self-worth some more? Because that was great. I've got a good workout. You know, nobody's saying this. And with the posturing, nobody's saying, hey man, real good to see you. I really loved how softly I had to practice walking around your fragile ego. You know, that was a good time. You know, it was like a balloon that was about to pop, and I just was so terrified to touch it. So that really taught me to be real terrified and careful. And so could we do that again? Nobody. So on either side, the collapsing and posturing it's not a good time.
Oh,
Nobody enjoys being around it. But we all, that third place of composure. And
yeah.
because composure is not a formula of it always looks like this. It's just when somebody's comfortable in their skin, and of course
Yeah.
everyone has different skin, thank God. So everyone's going to look different in composure.
Uh-huh.
But the experience, in my mind, when we're around collapse and posturing, is we get uptight. There's something in us that, you know, but when we're around composed people, we just relax.
I just want to translate. I call it alive and well, that space, and Tad, you call it composure. And it's just different. It's different aspects of that same in the center of self, comfortable in skin place. Yeah.
So here's my question for you. I'm curious about is okay. So we've got collapse and posturing.
Yeah.
What do you see is that they have in common? What do you see as the common root of both of them?
Oh, control.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I would say emptiness, which is, but
I don't sense that as much, but again, we have different skin, so we're going to slightly perceive it differently. Yeah.
How do you see control?
I see, often the collapsing person is trying, I'm going to introduce one of my favorite ways of seeing humans, which comes through Annie Axford of Sensitive Leadership, who is in this interview series. I can't wait for it. And she didn't come up with this. It was psychologist Elaine Aron who did the initial studies to demonstrate that there's a genetic trait of high sensitivity. It's not just a personality. It's not just how someone was raised. All of these, there is a genetic trait. It is not just among humans. It's all living species that 15 to 20% of any population processes more information from their environment on a number of levels. And so this is a setup. If someone is in that 20% of the people that I include myself in that group, we're already sensing acutely the emotional state, what's going on in the environment. We have more of that information to process just from how our bodies are, and then add in any developmental trauma or any boom boom trauma, big things. All of that takes us more in the direction of, oh my gosh, I am aware of a lot. So there's this, if the center of self isn't accessed, or there isn't a pathway to come home and know, wait a minute, I need to just access what my own nervous system is experiencing. If there isn't that pathway created yet, we have to control the whole world in order just to feel okay as a single person, whatever our world is, our neighborhood, but it can extend quite far. So this picture, have you seen the cartoon? I want to find it. It's it shows, you can either put on a pair of shoes. I was trying to put leather around the whole world, and then I thought, oh my God, I can just put on a pair of shoes. So the highly sensitive person is trying to apply a pair of shoes to the whole planet, essentially. Yeah. So the control comes there is because the permeability is so great, and the being in touch with their own information is dim enough, and that's for a whole host of reasons, that it seems like the only possible thing is I'm going to try to clothe everybody else. So there's the control from that side. On the posturing side, it's I'm in control of you because there's something I want and you're in my way. And it's, I don't know. Tell me more, because I'm always fuzzier on the posturing side.
I would say for me, my understanding would be on the collapsing side, the control is trying to get love. And maybe safety too. Maybe there's that.
Oh, yeah.
That might be something that both sides have in common.
I'm going to say that's both sides, but tell me, you have more.
I've just experienced the flavor of collapsing is more about love me, whereas the flavor of posturing is more respect me, respect me.
Oh, I've seen that. You have an amazing, is that connected to a blog post?
Yeah, it's at marketingforhippies.com/vibe chart.
It's really excellent. Do check it out, marketingforhippies.com/vibe chart. What we're talking about, Tad and I, he has assembled this long list in a column, much like that under and over column that helped me articulate a lot of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say yes. I would say yes, the love me and respect me, but beyond that, both, any way we're out of whack, it's often a very sophisticated combination of love and a deficit or a distortion in love and belonging and safety on both sides.
Well, and the other thing I would say on the control piece is one of the things that in different ways both sides are trying to control is the reputation they have, how others see them.
Oh,
people who collapse want to be seen as a giver.
You're right.
And maybe people who posture want to be seen as successful in some way.
Yes.
But there's some way we desperately need to be seen. And everything becomes this covert manipulation that's why people give so much and they overgive. And this is why people set such firm boundaries because they don't want to be seen as a pushover. And so they maybe overreact. And but it's not actually about how they feel. It's about I don't want to be seen like this. So I will do everything I can to control the way that people see me, which means you live in terror constantly.
Yes. And how either the collapser or the posturer, how they actually feel is off limits. The more, then that's where I get like the first pillar of how I conceptualize and sort of practice is reveling. Reveling is not just woohoo, revel. It's actually knowing having access to my own range of feeling, that I can have the heights of joy and the depths of grief and the rage and all, and I can be bored and I can have all of the different feelings and sensations and know when I have them. I mean, that's advanced. I'm not there yet. And I would say the same. I would say that there are certain feelings and sensations that the collapser is more likely to not feel. Rage. Grief tends to be much more acceptable for a collapser. Yeah. And rage, I would say rage and disgust, the posturer.
Wow, really? That's well said.
Yeah.
And when I think about the emptiness, this is part of how I might put this in. And there's an amazing book. I think maybe you've read it, Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman.
I haven't read that one.
Amazing book, but she does a really interesting thing.
I need to read it.
She compares and contrasts supremacy and trauma and how they both show up in similar ways. And that in both cases, and she also looks at borderline personality as a way, but basically if you grew up with some sort of trauma or cultural familial poverty, emotionally speaking, and you will have very little sense of self. You don't know who you are. There's a kind of big hole where the sense of self should be. And so one of the ways that we deal with this is we we become very controlled. There's such a fragility inside. There's such a hollowness that it's like an eggshell, and we have to protect it. And so one of the ways people protect it, I think, is the overgiving, to protect that fragile sense of self as a protection. Because if anyone were to say, you're selfish, oh my God,
Yeah.
that egg
Oh,
would just
selfish. Yeah.
crumble. But
Don't say
uh,
selfish.
with the posturer, if somebody looked at somebody who's posturing and said, you know what, you're totally fake, you're full of shit, that would just, you're not that successful. This is all an act. This, because what the posturer knows is that's true. Uh, um, and so, there's so much that's done to avoid ever seeing that. So I just think a lot of this has its roots in a kind of Gananga gap of the soul, this
Inungaka.
void. Gananga gap, it's the where the universe came from in Norse mythology, this
Oh,
void.
okay. I love that.
And so, okay, here's another question I have.
But
What do you, go ahead.
can you remember it? Please remember it. Okay. I'm not quite resonating with the emptiness piece. I'm gonna say, but I'm trying to feel for what on my map is that place.
Well, how do you feel about fragility?
Yes, but that doesn't feel like it's the core thing. I'm gonna actually reference Annie Axford's work. Abraham Maslow created the hierarchy of human needs, that triangle. The first iterations of it, he didn't even include the top pieces. There were transcendence and actualization weren't even on it. I think he had maybe 3 levels. The bottom being physical safety and food and shelter. I think he went up to the middle place, which is love and belonging. Okay, Annie has proposed that we turn it on its head for highly sensitive people. We turn that triangle on its head because as a highly sensitive person, where we live in and what we tend to first is transcendence. We live in transcendence. We eventually, over the course of our life, get to physical safety and shelter and food. Like I'll be an example. I didn't even have food in my fridge consistently until a couple years ago. So I'm a little bit of a gross example in that way. I now do. It's really exciting to me. And but anyway, it's not the emptiness. There's so much transcendence. It's feeling and not being able to embody it and share it through the lens of my individual architecture, exactly who I am. It's being connected to so much on sometimes a very fuzzy level, to energies, to feelings, to what is often the domain of mysticism. So connected to that and longing to be able to express it through my exact self. I mean, that's what I do in my work. So it didn't come from a place of emptiness. It came from a place of true fullness that I could not share in a satisfying way.
So would you say that both posture and collapse have their roots in an oversensitivity, or not over, but like an extreme sensitivity?
I'd say that collapsing has its roots in what you might call oversensitivity. Posturing, my guess is, yeah, actually also, an oversensitivity that instead of, I would say that the collapser, which I could almost substitute with the sensitive person, almost substitute those. The sensitive person has decided to revere. Maybe they didn't decide. It's how they were made up. They are revering this amount of feeling. Even if they can't access it safely, they know it's more important than their life, actually. It's more important than whether they're alive or dead. And for the posturer, I think it's not oversensitivity in the same way as a highly sensitive person. I think it's that, I'm a guessing again, because that's not my main spot or vantage, that feelings are suspect. Feelings are not revered. They are in the way of things. And I would say in general, yeah, I would be a little guessing going from there.
Well, and because this isn't something I've really thought about too much myself, but it does. I think it works actually. That this extreme sensitivity, maybe we could say, to the extent that somebody is extremely sensitive, living in a culture that refuses to honor that sensitivity,
Yep.
to that extent, you'll see a collapsing or posturing. And this ties into the other cards. I know you have the rebel and the what is
Oh,
it?
submitting. Yeah, we want to look at submitting versus rebelling too. Yeah.
Yeah, that there's a woman in my program who I want to make sure you meet, Linda, who
Okay.
Linda Katz, and she we've been talking a lot about this, and the same kind of stuff has been coming up. And the way she words it is compliance and defiance, which is also nice.
Oh, love that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that these are right. These are the choices. So I think. Okay, well, here's my question. So the submission and rebellion, to me, very connected to posture and collapsing. And I would say the collapse tends to be more submit, and the posture tends to be more rebel.
Uh-huh.
But where do you think? Okay, if there's the, let's say in the model between collapse and posturing, in the middle we've got this extreme sensitivity. Then there's still the cultural piece. And I'm
Wait,
curious,
I have to catch the model. You have posturing over here and
well,
collapsing over. Well,
either
on
side.
two sides. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the collapsing and posturing, and in the middle there's this extreme sensitivity. Or this is something they share. Then
I'll stay with you. Okay.
Roll with me. So there's something they share, this extreme sensitivity. Or we could imagine, if you do it like a diamond, they have their roots and it shows up in this different way. I think there's something from the top that is also at a cultural level, like at the very personal level, an extreme sensitivity, but I think at the cultural level, there's something applying pressure that causes the bifurcation. Because the extreme sensitivity on its own, I don't think necessarily turns into collapsing and posturing. But I think that bifurcation comes from a certain sort of external cultural something. And I'm curious what
you have just referenced another of the frame cards, which is systemic versus singular. Because we're in multi-layered systems. The people and the governmental systems and the what's okay or not okay, what's encouraged or not encouraged in human behavior, how we interact, not just civically, how we interact. I think that it does put that pressure. And I would say that, without a doubt, that we live in left shifted culture, extremely left, meaning we are taught, we are lauded for looking at the world through a left brain way. We are taught to analyze in school. We are taught to separate and make categories. We are not taught, it's the right brain that can see another human as a human. The left brain sees other humans as objects or functions.
Right.
So I would say it's this left shifted culture that has put the pinch on everybody, whether we're leaning towards collapsing or posturing. And the road out is to resuscitate our tragically overgrown jungles of right brain experience. And art, time in nature, listening to music, receiving genuine empathy from other people, and from ourselves, resonating with ourselves. All of these are ways to begin to resuscitate our right brains.
Yeah.
What do you think in there, Ted? Did I answer the question?
There's the old joke. My friends used to tell me I didn't listen very well. I think that's what they said. And then they said, "You're not very empathetic." I said, "Fuck you." Sorry.
Okay.
But because when you said empathy, it had me think about that. That's of course important. But do you know the book The Master and the Servant?
I've heard of it, but haven't read it.
speaks about the right and the left brain, and the way that
The master and the servant.
yeah, the right brain is aware of all the parts, but knows it doesn't understand all the details.
Oh yeah, this is the book that's been recommended to me on this topic. Yeah.
Yes, right. But then the left brain doesn't understand the whole, but it does not understand that it doesn't understand the whole.
Yes, that's not possible for the left brain to do. It can't see a whole of them. Yeah.
But that's interesting. So you're saying we have a left-shifted culture, that is really biased towards this understanding of a rational, linear, sequential, kind of step-by-step, bullet point understanding of the world.
Yes.
They connect, and that is a part of that cultural systemic pressure that we're all living under.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting the way that Linda talks about it. We've been working through her point of view stuff, so we're cresting on a tipping point, I think, soon. But one thing she said, and we're still working on the metaphor, so may not be the final one. Okay. It really struck me was she called it the patriarch.
Yeah.
But I guess particularly for women would identify with that, and they acknowledge that this is a placeholder for some sort of systemic domination.
Yeah.
And maybe just the easy one to grab. But there's the patriarch that looms over, and there's some sort of pressure that it puts on, and internally, in response to that pressure, especially if we're traumatized and we're very sensitive, there's this. One feels like one has to choose at that point. And the way she worded that, and the way I imagined it was like, on one shoulder, there's the good girl.
Mm-hmm.
On one shoulder, there's the rebel. And the good girl for your whole life is just whispering to you, here's how you can fit in, and here's how you can belong.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other shoulder, the rebel is all about authenticity. Gabor Mate, who I love, he speaks about this, how, when we grow up, we feel like we're faced with, do you want to be attachment and belonging, or do you want to be authentic? And of course, we all choose attachment and belonging.
We want both, though.
I know. So this is, I think, where the rebel erupts from time to time, is the need for authenticity becomes so strong that every once in a while will erupt. But there's that fracture that happens, and suddenly the soul is thrown into the dungeon of the belly, which becomes tight and clenched forever. And the woman has no access to it anymore, and so it becomes hollow inside as a result of the vacating of the soul. And there's this imagining, like, my only two options are, I'm either the good girl, or every once in a while I erupt and I'm the bad girl, I'm the rebel. And one side is trying to belong, one side's trying to be authentic, and also that there's that kind of division from the neck up, where we're all in the head, but particularly I think even better rendering is we're in this left brain.
Yeah.
And so then the tragic way that so many people try to deal with this patriarch is through an intellectual, rational process. But so you're using the master's tool to dismantle the master's house, quote Audre Lorde, and you're trying to, you can't do it. You're deepening the trance. You think you're getting out of this patriarchy.
It's not, you can't left brain your way into right brain health. It's not possible.
And so her thing is, you have to go into the body. You have to go down into the belly, into the soul, and you have to let that out.
Yes.
And that's the medicine that's needed. Yeah, you can't logic yourself out of logic.
Yes.
Because if you try to do that, you end up with things like this kind of syllogism. Nothing is better than eternal happiness. A ham sandwich is better than nothing. Therefore, a ham sandwich is better than eternal happiness.
I'm very excited now. I have to actually shake my body down, use one of my tools to reset my nervous system, because I got too excited by all the things you were just saying.
What was it that excited you about it?
What did? Well, okay.
Yeah,
when you're talking about I think Linda's emerging metaphors and all of this, and at the end you were speaking about the brain, the left and the right there. So I want, the whole body is our brain.
Mm.
The whole, I want to give direct credit to. I learned this through Sarah Payton of empathybrain.com, who I'm shy, but I want to invite her to be on this too. Sarah, I love you. So, yep. So the whole body is our brain. And when we are not knowing what our sensations and our feelings are, we
Mhm.
have a very, very reduced access to our brain.
That's interesting.
Brain
Yeah.
is not, yeah,
Well, this, what makes me think, just a small tangent is,
sure.
okay, so this came from a lot of reading and thinking I was doing about restorative justice. But let's just say, as a culture, what we want is responsible people. That this is one of the great functions of all traditional cultures, is you're trying to craft a responsible humanity. And using that etymology of able to respond, Viktor Frankl's
Yes,
thing,
I love that. Able to
between stimulus and response, not reacting, but we've got to respond. Okay, so then the question becomes, how do you get to a responsible person? What's the medicine you need? And I think primarily the medicine that you need is accountability. Accountability is what creates responsibility. Yeah. But so if
I don't
responsibility is the
agree.
ability to
I don't
respond,
agree.
then what is accountability? Okay. Well, hold on.
Okay. Okay. I'll
Stick
wait.
with it.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
So accountability, what is accountability? Accountability is the ability to account. And what does that mean? It means a capacity for a storied understanding of the world. It means a capacity to understand the larger wake of consequence that created you and that stems from everything you do and everything you don't do. So this capacity for a web of relatedness in the mind, to be able to see the big story, this is my understanding of accountability. Accountability is not punishment or consequence. Accountability is literally saying, if I were to say I'm going to hold you accountable, it wouldn't be chastising. It'd be saying, Kellita, other people may not see this in you, but I hold that you have this ability to understand um, the full wake, everything that followed on everything. That you have the capacity to understand this bigger story that crafted you, and the story that's coming from you now. All the things that happened and never happened to make you, and all the things that will happen from what the thing you just did is, and the things that will probably never happen, and the things that are happening right now. I hold that you have that ability to do that accounting. And because this is the word account, it means story, the account of the Edmund Fitzgerald on all this. And so then the tie into what you just said is the whole body is the brain. So there's a larger accounting, and the left brain gives a very limited account. It's got part of the story that's a vital part. But if you imagine that that's the only storyteller in the house, this is when a lot of traditional cultures would try to figure something out that was very hard. The Okanagan in BC, they had this word analkin. The image it conjures is like a drop of water on the head, like osmosis absorption. But the process would be the community would get together with this very difficult issue in the center. And the simple version of it would be, could everyone please share their most opposite point of view? So that we can all, not so that we can see the truth, which I think is the left brain, what's the reduced, isolated thing, but so that we can see more.
Yeah.
The more refined version is, well, the women might have something to say, the men, the youth, the elders. And of course, one could do this in a lot of different ways. Well, let's hear from the, our gay or lesbian brothers and sisters. Let's hear from the people of color. Let's hear from, you could, a lot of ways, but you're trying to get more eyes and a bigger story. And so if we're locked in just the left brain, we have a limited capacity to account.
Yes. Okay. Through that definition, I would say yes to the accountability, but there was really a nugget. And I love Tad. I love how, you, with your point of view, and especially, the plug, you're helping me enlarge and my own understanding of, and I appreciate, even just through this conversation, I'm my consciousness is growing around this. And when you said, what was it that responsibility was the answer to, or the thing that was most important? Oh, in growing a responsible human, that accountability was the key element. Now I'm gonna speak from the point of view of a highly sensitive person. One of the can feel like a trap and a burden of having this high sensitivity is there is a crushing awareness of the web of relatedness and too much. So in fact, what I was going to say before you answered and said accountability is the most important thing for making a responsible human, the answer that I had in my own head was the person has to realize they are a person. That's the first thing. That's the first thing. And that's the angle from which I come in my own journey as a singular human who is in a system of humans. And how I work is that there, what has to be put away, and if you end up playing with this deck, if any of you hearing this end up playing this deck, this is a deck to help someone first become aware of their own that they are a person, because often with highly sensitive folks, there is a feeling that I don't have the right to exist. A lot of collapse comes from a place of I don't have the right to need and I don't have the right to exist. So when those organismic rights are addressed and someone feels they have the right to exist and the right to need, they experience their own humanity, they have their own information, and they naturally do accountability. So I would not want to come, I do not need to come from that aspect. If I take I don't need to be more aware of the system because I'm already smashed underneath it.
Wow.
I have to have a way where actually I have to find some breathing room to find a sense of I am, my own sense of I am.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's how to make cordage?
No, you mean actual cordage? No, I don't.
You basically take two strands. It could be any kind of fiber. It could be yarn, but it could be grass or roots or something. But there's a process where you take these two strands, you twist one, you pass the other under, twist, pass that under, and you're twisting in such a way that when they kind of roll back, they twine.
Oh.
Yeah. So they kind of wrap around each other. They become tighter together. So you get, the two become stronger than the one. And I'm just seeing that maybe this is an understanding of a responsible human is, I wrote this essay called Responsibility as Medicine. As I looked at it, I realized responsibility gets talked about as if it's a fact. You're responsible for something or you're not. But it struck me that sometimes what somebody needs to hear is, this is you. You're responsible. And sometimes what people need to hear is not your fault. And that both of those have a medicinal quality at different times for different people.
Yes. Beautiful. And I focus a little more on the stage at which it is appropriate and life-giving to understand it's not your fault. And if that's not balanced out either through nature or nurture with it is your, well, I would actually say, no, it's woven into my picture here that, I am responsible. I am able to respond. But my bent is, I believe that when people when they find that center of self, I believe that they operate most automatically as a responsible human. And I realize that is a real bent. That's a bent I have.
Well, I'm hearing, like, if you want a responsible person, there has to be two things. One is the responsibility, but also the person.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, that's a really nice way to say it. And I would say you've got to start with the person. And our left-shifted world starts with the responsibility. And if we haven't caught up to our personhood yet, we are dust.
I was in Edinburgh at the Scottish Storytelling Festival. There's a guy, Robert Seven Crows, and he's a storyteller, sort of tradition bearer in his culture, which I believe is Akkadian and maybe some Mi'kmaq in there. I'm forgetting, but he did a lot of work in jails with men who'd done pretty awful things. And I asked him, I said, how do you help them deal with the shame of what they've done? And he paused and he said, we don't start with that. We have to help them remember who they are first. And of course, what he meant was remembering who they are on a cultural level too. It's like, hey, you come from a people. There's something beautiful here. He had to start there was my sense. And once they had some cultural understanding of themselves, some sense of roots, and I deserve to be here in the world, and maybe humans aren't all terrible. And when that was there, then I think they could move into this conversation about shame. But to take it back to the very early part of our conversation, if that sense of self is so fragile, is so gossamer, to try to put too much weight on it, it's like a little shoot that's just starting to grow, a
Exactly.
little seed, and there's no woody growth on it yet to bear any weight. And you're trying to put the hammock of responsibility on to, bear the community, and it just crushes the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the medicine for the moment. It's the right medicine. Ultimately, we all need the same medicines, but in different doses and at different times.
Yes, and I'm gonna have to go soon, but
Yeah, it's actually we're coming to a beautiful close, and it's a good time. Yeah.
it just strikes me because I'm thinking about this through the lens of marketing. One day I'm going to write a book called Vibe: The Hidden Mechanics of Why People Buy, but just talking about the importance of the vibe that we put off. Because the thing I've seen is in business, if you're trying to market yourself, if you come from the place of collapse, you will repel people. They really don't want to be around because they can feel the burden, they can feel the deal, and they just slowly back away. But also, if you come from posturing, it's just as repulsive. People really just can't be around it very long. And so people hamstring themselves a lot. And of course my people tend to be more collapsers, and they'll experiment, they'll dabble with the posturing, where mainstream business, it's the kind of the flip. But when people are coming from this place of composure, nobody needs to run from you, nobody needs to defend, nobody needs to set some boundaries and feel concerned. People can just relax, and from that place, from that vibe of everyone just chill, you can have a human conversation. And what you know is, in marketing, especially if you add that hidden agenda of I'm trying to get the sale, but if you get this love me, I'm trying to get that from you, plus I'm trying to get the sale from you, people feel the grasping, and so they protect.
Yeah.
But if you're not going for the sale, you're just going for the truth, and you're not trying to get love, you're just being a loving presence,
Yeah.
then nobody needs to run, and people can just relax. And instead of you making a pitch, people can just have a human conversation.
Yeah. Do you have another minute or so? Okay, because there was a thread that I lost. Because it was that time when I got very excited because there were three things. I'm going to drop one. I got one, but I want to mention on the submitting versus rebelling, because I have a slightly different hit on. I think you were sharing the point of view of, from some construct, that the rebelling is the authenticity piece. How I see it, rebelling, and I'll use this in the context of creating a conscious burlesque solo. So there's if you come in the submitting way, it's more, okay, tell me how to move. Yes, create a phrase of music for me. All, instead of using it as this amazing, oh my God, I can actually DIY. I get to choose the music. I get to choose the costume elements. I get to, and really make it an expression of what wants to come through that person. That's on the more submitting side, doling it out. And the rebelling, while I think it's important in a stage of human development, like in adolescence, and all, maybe at 2 years old first, and then at adolescence, to rebel and push that I am not that. To approach burlesque, some people's doorway in can be, I am not my family, I am not those values, and it can be a pushing away. It's a, I'm not you, I'm not you, I'm not you. That can be the doorway in, but if it stays there, if it stays in the FU, I am not you, it is not regenerative, and it will not be a source of awakening. It's going to keep someone spinning in the hamster wheel of focusing on the other that they are not. So the middle way, which is the alive and well way, which I love to practice and play with, is, what is it? I'm coming back to this thing. Who is this human, and what does she need, and what does she want? And to create from there. So I just wanted to liberate my association with rebelling. Is it's not a great place to hang out in very long.
Right.
A short period, cool. And that could be applied to big scale things also. We could go on, but I'm going to close this here. And this is, thank you, Tad. It's always so wonderful to talk with you. Really.
Yeah, what a treat! What a treat! A very rich conversation. I'm leaving with my own sort of point of view on all this, with some new elements, which is
Me
wonderful.
too. Me too. Lucky World. This is Tad Hargrave of Marketing for Hippies. I'm Kellita Maloof, showgirlawakening.com, and we're going to close now. But don't go, Tad. I'm going to say goodbye to you alone. Bye, world. Thanks for tuning in.